So Sarah and I, we were trying to figure this out the other day actually. I think we initially met at a Right to Roam event in the fish factory in Penryn, and we sort of kept turning up at similar events really, and I guess that makes sense. You know, we're both interested in ecology, we're interested in kind of land rights, we're interested in people's relationship with the land. So we just had a couple of different times where we met each other through friendship groups or events, realised we had a lot in common, ended up spending more time together, and then we were in my studio actually, and we were talking about running dye gardens together, which is something that we do, and from there it sort of evolved, and then before we knew it, it was like, oh, this is actually, we can make Cornish Inks, this sounds really exciting. I started primarily as a performance artist. I actually studied sculpture at Wimbledon College of Art, but ended up really interested in sort of site-specific work. And then through that ended up using my dance background to bring in performance elements to site-specific installation and sculptural work. And then during my masters, I really got into printmaking, and so started to combine those two things together. Foraging, I think, kind of happens naturally as a result of dealing with this way of working. Obviously, if you're making botanical inks, you can just grow all your own material. But I think one of the things that's been important to Sarah and myself in our practice is this idea of site specificity and really spending time in particular places, listening, building a relationship essentially with the land, and because of that you become attentive to colour in your environment and what that colour can potentially be turned into.
Still not all of it, I'll do. Now I'll deal with it tomorrow. And that, the tannin inks, I usually leave them for a few days. So it's quite happy to, that one's been going for a few days. That's the oak. Right. I'm going to sit there for a day. I'll deal with you tomorrow. My practice is, I suppose it's my, it's my witnessing the natural world around me, where I live, the place, the outside world, you know, the non-human world. I record and write and photograph and I collect. I make the inks that I draw with. I make the paints that I paint with. I'm learning. I still haven't mastered everything, but I'm learning to make pastels, and it's an amazing process, and it's just it's got me reconnected to that element of my practice, which was being connected to the natural world and witnessing the natural world around me.
And one of the things we're always really careful of doing is that when we're foraging, we're never taking more than 10% of any given plant so that you're not hurting it. Always doing things like plucking from particular parts of the plant to ensure its safety. And similarly, when you're dealing with coastline, you don't want to be like hacking at cliff rock or anything like that. So we'll look for things that have already fallen, already chipped off, and then you can grind that. So there's this incredible sort of like dusty pink from Swamppool that's very typical of that area. And then there's also a beautiful yellow earth pigment that's also a kind of sedimentary rock. And then we'll develop a set of inks and colours that represent that place, that come from the botanical and earth pigment in that area. And we're doing that for several reasons. One is climate change and trying to get people to use natural materials, and also as a way of like exploring Cornwall and the different ecologies in Cornwall.
A regular walk then is quite often is to Mainport, so that sort of like little stretch is just something that I do, and it seems to be it's a walk that Elizabeth does regularly as well.
The next collection for Cornish Inks is going to be Swampall to Mainporth, and the reason that we've chosen that area is that it's a landscape that we're both really familiar with on a personal level. It holds significance for us in terms of an area of land. It was the one we talked about most when we started. When we came to thinking about what we would like the second collection to do, it just seemed like the obvious place to start, and then where we'll go from there, who knows?